The world's first execution machinery was simple and remarkably effective. This technology harnessed three very basic forces of nature: fire, force, and gravity. But just how did these ancient death devices work? The only way to answer this question is to bring these deadly machines back to life.
Execution, torture, and technology share a similar road in human history.
There is an untold story behind many of the basic inventions that have improved our society.
Individuals that have suffered execution and torture have not only changed the societies around them, but are really demarcations of points when history can take a turn in a new direction.
Were skilled metal workers. They could certainly craft a realistic piece of this size.
Bronze is a relatively low-temperature metal. It would melt at about 1,800 degrees. It's an alloy of copper and tin. For something close to 1,000 pounds, which is what a full-scale bull would weigh, they probably would have made it out of sheet metal like this, and this is sheet bronze right here. If the fire maybe reached 5 to 1,000 degrees, it's not going to melt the bronze, but it would soften it.
The brazen bull is basically going to be conduction heat, which is ultimately what's going to kill the condemned. When you have that flame that's going to be underneath, it will actually heat out in a cylindrical pattern, depending on the mass, all the way through the entire thing. So depending on how big the flame is, this whole thing will uniformly heat.
To understand just how quickly heat transfers through bronze and into flesh, blacksmith Tony Swatton has devised a simple experiment. Build a bowl from bronze and sear chicken meat.
This is relatively light metal, but anyone inside of this would not be able to get out of it. Bronze work hardens to almost the degree of the steel once you hammer it. So now we're ready to cook.
The chicken meat simulates human flesh. It will help visualize how quickly heat transfers into a person when in direct contact with bronze.
You're probably going to be getting at least 800 degrees on the inside of this. You can see the heat developing here. This will get to a red heat. And see how it's getting red right there? So that area is red from the contact with the flame underneath it. And the chicken underneath here is still burning. So you can see it's just like cooking in a regular frying pan. Now, if I'm doing direct flame, I mean, that chicken's on fire. The heat and smoke and fumes coming off of here would be suffocating you on the inside. The pain would be horrible, and you'd be burning to death.
When the person is placed inside this brazen bull, it's just like cooking a turkey in your oven. You burn the outside of the skin and you slowly dehydrate the inside, and if you leave them in there long enough, it'll eventually become very tough and very dry. The heat itself would slowly cook you from the inside out.
The extreme heat engulfing the victim would make for a short musical performance before heat exhaustion knocked him out. One can only speculate how quickly the brazen bull would then finish him off. Based on the extreme dehydration trauma, the survival window is under 10 minutes. For 16 years, the tyrant condemned anyone who challenged his power to cook inside the brazen bull.
Tradition, of course, has it that Phalaris enjoyed this device so much that he would use it during banquets, inviting people over, listening to the bull roar, and also masking the scent of the roasting flesh by adding aromatic herbs so there was more of an effective incense in the air than of burning human flesh.
This is not something you just did and walked away from. This was a source of entertainment. I don't know what kind of person would think of that. It's absolutely cruel, it's absolutely sadistic, and completely inhumane.
Ancient texts state the cruel brazen bull was tossed into the ocean immediately after Phalaris was tossed from his throne in 554 BC. But the technology of the brazen bull persists today. The sound of this machine is a one-note terror. But today's brass instruments can play an entire range of musical notes. When humankind's greatest discoveries are listed, the ability to control fire undoubtedly rises to the top. As much as fire has improved and advanced civilizations, it has also facilitated countless executions. And there is no fire-fueled machine of malice quite as horrifying as the Wicker Man. The year 500 BC, while ancient Greece flourishes and the Persian Empire awakens, a seemingly mythical machine of malice strikes fear across the area now called Western Europe. Every May 1st, the Celtic tribes celebrate the coming of summer. They pay homage to the time of year when livestock herds are brought to grazing pastures. Even today, there are May Day and Beltane festivals in Europe, celebrating the coming of summer, including this actual Wicker Man burn in Scotland. Only here, no one is put to death. It's none other than Julius Caesar himself who first documents in 58 BC this shocking pagan execution ritual.
Caesar's reference to this is the sole reference that we have, not only to the event, but also to the fact that it incorporated a sacrificial element.
The ancient Celts tie up people and livestock inside each effigy. Julius Caesar describes the Wicker Man's victims as thieves and prisoners of war.
This event is not only just a sacrifice, it's also a kind of spectacle and public show. Just like at 4th of July, you wouldn't want the fireworks to take only 5 minutes. You probably wouldn't want the burning of the Wicker Man to collapse in a few minutes.
No one knows exactly how the ancient Celts built the Wicker Man. But the design needed to be strong enough to support the weight of human and livestock victims. The goal of the Wicker Man burn is to please both the Celtic deities and the festival participants. The flames leaping into the night sky serve to mesmerize the spectators. To achieve this effect, the Celts wrapped the structure in highly flammable brush and thatch. But the destructive power of the fire could quickly collapse the Wicker Man if there are no central support columns.
They would have cut down trees and used them as our support in our columns. That actually is an amazingly strong shape to use, and it's readily available for them. Large structures, we pretty much always try to use cylinder. It's just now, with modern times, we're going to use a square beam. It's easier to attach things to, it's easier to build, it's easier to work with than an actual cylinder. There are concrete parking garages today. You're going to see either a round cylinder or you're going to see a square beam going through to handle all the compression loads. You put a load on top of the cylinder, you're going to have an equal and opposite force acting through the ground back up to your point. So your area of your beam is what's holding that load.
So the total thickness of each leg determines how much weight the Wicker Man can support. Larger diameter legs also keep the structure from collapsing into a fiery heap when engulfed in flame. As a rule, the thicker the columns holding up the torso, the longer the figure remains upright. The ancient Celts did not have carpentry techniques advanced enough to build square columns, so they would have secured the tree limbs with twine lashings to create cylindrical columns. Even though this modern replica uses nails, it relies on the same basic engineering principles to support weight high off the ground.
We are rushing, as you can see, to get this done and built before sunset, so we could actually imitate what they did in the ancient times and burn at night. We're using thatch to cover the whole thing. That is what we call would be a kindling. At very low flash point, it could start relatively easily, and then that actually will transfer the flame to the wood.
But for those unfortunate to be lashed inside, the fast-moving fire means an agonizing death. How quickly that fire moves and how long it takes to destroy the structure is subject to debate.
Most likely with the heat, it's actually probably not a quick death, in that you suffer a lot of pain with the burns that you get, and you also get smoke inhalation injuries. Your trachea will swell. In essence, what the fire actually is doing is just drying you out from the inside out. From a medical standpoint, this has to be one of the most painful ways to be put to death.
While advances in basic technology pushed many ancient societies forward, they were also used to punish and execute. The ancients mechanized fire, gravity, and force to create some of history's most malicious machines.